Hello everyone and welcome to my UBA Season 2 Week 6 Power Rankings. Same as usual, so I'll get right into it. This week things are starting to develop a lot more, especially towards the top and bottom side. There's a very clear bottom pack and a very clear top pack. But the middle pack, just as it's been all season, is very interesting and really shifting. And pretty much teams, the bottom three eliminated. So yeah, pretty much 9 teams all have very viable claims into playoffs at this point, but only 6 will be able to make it. So it's going to be a very interesting and fun run to see who of the top 9 teams will take those 6 spots. So it's going to be very high profile, very important games coming up between any teams who are in the top 9 at this point. All the games between each other are extremely important. Pretty much any team in the top 9 needs to. Any of the games are extremely important because they're all neck and neck in competition, and it's going to be very close to see who comes out with these playoff spots. So at number 11, I have Kudo, who got his game done early against Reggie and finally played his game against Hazy and did not play very well in either or prep very well. He brings pretty much the same sets every week, which is not helping him. He is not playing particularly well. The sets are becoming predictable and weren't that good in the first place, especially things like Trick Uxie. Against Reggie, he just played abysmally around the Incineroar. I understand he missed a Stone Edge, but hitting 2 Stone Edges in the first place was not super in his favor, so it's not like it was blatant hacks. And also, the play against Incineroar thereafter was just abysmal, like trying to Thunder Wave it instead of just not understanding how Klefki works, trying to defog on it as it just sets up all over him when he couldn't even defog on it. Play against Hazy, also not great. The Nihilego late game, which was very obviously locked into Hin Power Ground, he wasn't able to identify it and sack like 3 things to it when he really didn't need to. Just didn't play very well in either game or prep very well. Brings pretty much the same sets, so no reason to move him up. And he'll be staying at number 11 until he proves he can do better. Number 10, I have Enzo, who played very poorly and prepped not great either. But probably should have won this game against Reggie this week. Or he hasn't played his Week 6 game against Hazy yet, but he has played his Week 7 against Reggie. So I'm expecting him to lose to Hazy, but if he doesn't, then he kind of got robbed of a few spots for the Week 6 rankings by not getting that game done. But I'll just be talking about the games he has played. He probably should have won that game against Reggie because Reggie did not prep very well for Enzo's team at all. Pincer did not have Earthquake, so it couldn't deal with the Empoleon, and really nothing on Reggie's team could really come in and deal with the Empoleon. The Empoleon didn't have Flash Cannon for whatever reason, which is especially surprising because he had a Ninetales of Lola on his roster, a Tapu Fini, a bunch of things that Flash Cannon would have really helped him with. And if he had Flash Cannon instead of Roar, which he wants to bring every week for whatever reason, even though it hasn't really helped him that much, he could have really been a super bitch to deal with for Reggie's team and probably won him the matchup. Empoleon was super hard for him to deal with as it was, but if it had Flash Cannon, it would have been immensely more difficult. He also keeps bringing Pressure Zapdos for some reason, and Pressure Zapdos is really only going to help you if you're playing stall or have a specific move you think you might PP stall someone out of. Otherwise, you want Static, and Static had 2 chances to get 2 extremely critical paralyzes this game on the Gligar on a U-turn, and especially important, a quick attack on the Zapdos, or a quick attack from the Pinsir. Had he gotten either of those paras, he could have both slowed down those bonds, especially helpful in the case of Empoleon, making Empoleon faster than the Gligar and the Pinsir. I'm not so sure if it's faster than the Pinsir after para, but it still would have been useful. And at the very least, giving him that 25% chance to hacks him, there's just no reason to not have Static, and would have had huge returns had he gotten one of those paras, and it's about a 50% chance to have gotten one of the two. So, yeah, very poor prep on that part. I don't know why he brings Precious Aptos every week. The sets, he brings pretty much the same sets every week, or like changes a few moves, but it's not like, I feel the sets he brings aren't really trying to counter what his opponent has, which they should be. He's more just, I don't even understand. It's kind of just an enigma as to what he brings and why. But the sets are always like far too standard and don't really have a niche within the games he's taking him into. He also made some really whack plays, like bringing Empoleon in on the pincer when it was set up, and then doubling out as if he threatened it out. What more than likely he, like, I suppose it was like a prediction, but he had a hard time switching into the Empoleon anyways, so I don't know why you would go into Togetic and give away all your momentum and make a sack had he just decided to return. The play just threw away the free attack that Empoleon got and brought in Togetic, who did nothing. The Togetic also didn't have Defog, which could have taken away an Aurora Veil and taken off rocks, but instead Togetic sat there and did nothing. So yeah, a lot of problems with Enzo's prep and play, and even then Reggie's prep and play weren't great either this week, and he probably could have pulled the game out with better sets and better play, even if they were just slightly so. But not impressed this week with Enzo. No reason to move him up. Next up we have Flair, also very unimpressed this week. Same problem has always been. He refuses to bring Scarfers. He refuses to scout for Scarfers. I'm not sure if he knows Scarfs exist. He leads with Starmie against Crook. Ordinarily against Class CL, like, I would say it's a bad play to not scout for the Scarf Starmie, but Flair has not brought Life Orb Starmie. He's also not brought Life Orb Galvantula. He has also not brought Z-Move Infernape. He's also not brought Sandrush Excadrill. Every time he brings anything, they're all the same sets, all super predictable. He refuses to bring Scarfers. Like, it would probably be a bad play to not scout for that had it not been Flair and his inability to change things up or bring anything to revenge anything faster than a 121 base speed Mon. So Class CL really just abused the fact that he did not have anything faster than his Scarfers, anything faster than his Arrow, anything faster than his Noivern. And Crook just came in, click knockoff, killed the Starmie. He brought out the Life Orb Galvantula, which the Crook was clearly scarfed and had a Moxie boost. I don't understand. Like, maybe you're trying to threaten to have the Sash, or trying to threaten to be the Scarf, which, I mean, could have worked had you maybe brought a single Scarfer in the first 6 weeks, but the fact that you didn't makes it pretty obvious. So yeah, just not bringing Scarfers and not prepping well, not scouting for the Scarfers, and not having any options to even deal with a Scarfer because your prep was really bad. Yeah, if you're going to play HO and not have switch-ins to things, then you need to be able to outrun the things you don't have switch-ins to, otherwise you're just going to get fucked. And you didn't bring switch-ins to the things that outrun your fastest Mons when you have hyper offense and you got fucked. So you need to prep more creatively and actually understand what's going to happen in the matchup before it happens, or you're going to continue to get crushed like this by players who know what they're doing. Number 8, I have Jolty, who's dropping very hard this week after being pretty much obliterated by D Windchill. There was a weird calc that I actually couldn't even figure out that happened with his Kyurem that threw him off and made him think that Kyurem wasn't Scarf. So fair enough, but I don't think Jolty was winning this matchup either way. D Winchell did a good job of playing similar to how I did, of just abusing the fact that Jolty was going to bring in his Fat to wall his offensive members, and the fact that his Fat can't really do anything worthwhile, and he just abused the momentum that Jolty gave him by bringing in Fat, threw off Toxics, wore down his Fat, got in his offensive Mons. Once his Fat was worn down, there was nothing he could do to switch into the Scarf Kyurem, nothing he could do to switch into the arrow, even though it didn't have to do anything, and he was just overwhelmed and pretty much obliterated. Jolty, his biggest problem, in my opinion, is he doesn't understand, or not necessarily understand, but he's not anticipating what his opponents are going to do defensively against him and how he can win the game offensively. The way it looks like to me is that he preps to not lose rather than preps to win. So he's like, well, I can bring my Crest, I can bring my Gastro. Yeah, they'll wall this, they'll wall that. Yeah, I have this walled. I should be good. And then this thing can come in and kill this. But, like, obviously they're going to have defensive switch-ins to things. Their defensive switch-ins are going to try and do their best to provide them momentum. And Jolty's just being far too willing to give up the momentum and let his opponent take control of the game. And he's not really bringing a game plan to break down his opponent's team. And not really bring a game plan to keep the momentum in his court and to really take it to his opponent. He's just far too willing to give his opponent the control of the game and let them do what they want to him, which works against some teams who don't know what to do with this momentum or how to control it, and Jolty can still sometimes just wall them out. But against better opponents who are ready for this, they'll just take that momentum and really abuse it, and bring mons that will abuse his fat and take advantage of the initiative that it grants him. So he needs to do a better job of bringing mons that'll break down his opponent's team, having a plan of how to break down his opponent's team, anticipating how his opponent will try and stop his offense and try and counter it. He just a lot of times doesn't even bring a lot of his offense, like Zygarde, one of the best offensive mons in the game he has on his team, and he's only brought it like twice, I think, and it's done great when he brought it, but he hasn't been bringing it. Instead, he brought like a Hitmontop this game over a Zygarde, and Hitmontop did a total amount of work of stone edging a Doublade 2 or 3 times for 8% or something. He seems to prioritize defense far too much, and not really. He seems to sacrifice offensive pressure and his ability to really give his opponent anything to worry about. So he really needs to step it up on the offensive side, bring greater offensive threats, and stick it to his opponent, because the stall he has right now is not enough to cut it if he wants to win purely through defense. So he's going to need to bring his offense, and his offense he's been bringing has not been cutting it, and the way he's been playing it has not either. So he needs to improve on that. And he's kind of been free fall for the past few weeks, so he's really going to need to pick up this win against Classiel this week to get back into winning shape and have a good shot for playoffs. And the matchup isn't great for him, so we'll see what happens. But if he does drop this game, it's going to be a very, very tough ride to get into playoffs. But we'll see what happens to Jolty. Ooh, I scrolled the wrong way. Ugh, stop. Fell out of the wrong scroll area. There we go. At number 7, I have Peta, who also has been in free fall. He got absolutely smashed by Tepig this week. He just seemed to not anticipate what Tepig was going to bring in response. And Tepig, he didn't even have to do anything flashy this game. He just switched into his counter to any given mon, and really just obliterated Peta. There was nothing he could do. Even off of matchup, there was really nothing Peta could do to break Tepig's team. He just did not bring the power he needed. Peta needed to bring greater threats to threaten Tepig. Once the game started, there was nothing Peta could do to win that game. He was just out prepped. He did not have the tools it took to take down Tepig's team. So there was nothing he could do to really win that matchup. He just needed to prep better, and that's really been a serious problem Peta's all season, is the prep. He needs to get a bit more creative and understand what his opponent is going to bring and try and counter it, and he did not do that this week, and it just led to him being dominated. In Peta's favor right now, he has one of the easiest schedules going into these last 4 weeks. So he has a very good shot of making playoffs, even though his record is a bit worse than everyone else's. He's got, I believe, Kudo, Enzo, Does he play Flare still? I don't think he's played Kudo, Enzo, or Flare. Yeah, so he's got... I think he's got all three of them. I could be mistaken. But I think he's got all three of them to play. Which should be 3 very easy wins for him. So he's got one of the easiest schedules at this point. And if he's able to not choke on any given one of those wins, his shots of making playoffs are very good, which is good for him. So we'll see what happens. Maybe, but other than that, he just did not bring the offensive threats it took to bring down Tepig's team. I really would have liked to see a Calm Mind reuni this game. That was, or at least Magic Guard, because it would have been super hard for Tepig to deal with. And I get that defensive came for Lopunny, but the way his PETA's hyper offensive team works, he's got threats like Swampert, like Hawlucha, a whole bunch of things that are Coco maybe less so, but he can bring Scarfers and things like that. He can make it so that he doesn't really have to switch in to the into the Lop if he doesn't really have to, especially because most of his team really isn't particularly weak to Lop Stab. So I think he definitely could have gone without needing the Reuniclus check if he brought enough pace. Especially the Pelipper too, which can probably kill with a Hurricane if invested. So I think he definitely could have gotten away with bringing a more offensive, threatening, especially because defensive Calm Mind Reuniclus still could have filled that role, because it still can be, you still want to be defensive for a Calm Mind to upset anyways, but I think that would have served him very well this game. Unfortunately, he didn't bring it in really any threats that gave Tepig really even anything to worry about. Tepig really didn't even have to do anything to win this game. So that's PETA's loss. Number 6, I have D. Winchell, who dominated Jolty. I feel like could be rising him a bit too high. Maybe he doesn't deserve to be above PETA because he did beat Reggie, but that was through hacks. Reggie's been inconsistent, but he does have a good record at this point. And the win versus Jolty was very commanding and really made a statement. So we'll see what he does. He has Jeff this week, which will be a super important game. If he's able to win that game, he will solidify himself as a solid playoff contender. But I do have him ranked lower than Jeff currently, but we'll see what happens. But he is going to rise 2 spots after beating Jolty, and really proving that he can hang it with the top 9 players, and he's not just farming wins off the lower ones. He does have a pretty tough schedule from this point, but he did in terms of matchup this week, he just did a fantastic job of abusing the fact that Jolty isn't going to take the momentum and wasn't going to really threaten him. So he just threw off Toxics, wore down his walls, and eventually won with his Kyurem. But there was just nothing that Jolty could do to break his team or threaten him, especially once the Houndoom went down. So yeah, I think the game was just very well played by D. Winchell. Very well prepped for, and he won dominantly. If he's able to continue this form, he'll keep moving up. I talked about this game a lot though already with Jolty, so I feel it's mostly covered. I don't have to cover it much here. Just good prep, good play. We'll see what happens in the future. Number 5, I have Jeff, who I played this week, and he did lose 6-0. I didn't think 6-0 was necessarily indicative of how the game went. He brought a very good Venusaur set and played it very well. It was actually a major issue for my team to deal with. Had it not been for some hacks and a freeze on that Venusaur, he definitely could have at least managed 4 or 5-0. And defensively, he played the game well. I think his main problem was similar to Jolty. He didn't bring the offensive threats he needed to threaten me. These namely were like Tyranitar. He needed to bring a better Tyranitar and play it more offensively, give it more chances to break, and he didn't do that. The Valk set was dog shit, unfortunately, but he did play the game very well and prep, besides his offensive members, very well for this game. but he just didn't play it well enough, and that bit of prep he didn't bring, I think, really sealed the game for him. But I don't think 6-0 was really indicative of how the game went. His win over Tepig is still very impressive and hard to ignore, so I will be keeping him in the top half of my rankings. And we'll see what happens from here. He has a very big game coming up against D. Winchell, and it'll be very critical in deciding these two teams' futures and who will be making playoffs likely. If Jeff loses that game, it'll be extremely difficult run for him to make it into playoffs. But really, at this point, any of these teams in the top 8 have a shot at it. Top 9 because I'm considered one of them, I guess. But yeah, we'll see. It'll be a very fun few weeks and very important battles coming up. Yeah, that's about it for Jeff. Number 4, I have Classiel, who played Flair this week. I went over it. He really abused Flair's tendencies. Flair didn't even bring the Sand Rush Extra Drill, so there was nothing faster than his Arrow, nothing faster than Scarf Crook, nothing faster than Noivern. So pretty much those 3 mons just went into town and put it in Flair's butt, and there's really nothing Flair could do about it because he didn't bring Scarfers, he didn't bring Sand Rush, no speed control, and he just got outpaced with hyper offense, and you can't let that happen. So good prep on Classiel's part, very dominant win. Maybe small criticisms is like going for the Stone Edge against Infernape at the end didn't really make sense because he had Aerial Ace, which he's shown, and I would assume he had Earthquake, both of which probably killed and probably did more than Stone Edge, so I'm not sure why he clicked that against the Infernape. He probably could have claimed the 5-0 otherwise. Yeah, and risking a Hurricane on the Infernape thereafter with the Noivern when Draco also killed. Pretty much just like this last final 2 plays trying to kill the Infernape, clicking inaccurate moves to do it. I'm not sure why when accurate moves also did it. He could have guaranteed the 5-0, but he actually gave himself a chance of losing 3-0. So that was really the only problem. I'm not sure if that was just a lapse of judgment or he forgot or what. I'm kind of confused, but good win for Classiel. The only fear about moving Classiel up this high is the fact that he kind of lacks high profile wins, and he probably has the hardest schedule of anyone else in these final 4 weeks. He's got Jolty, he's got me, he's got Tepig, and I think he's got D. Winchell. D. Winchell and Jolty are both on losing streaks, so he definitely has a shot at that game. I think he's got Jeff too. Does he have 5 games still? 6, 5, yeah, 5 games, okay. So yeah, he's got me. No, he's got Hazy as well. Okay, now I'm confused. He's got me, he got Hazy, he's got D. Winchell, he has Jolty, he has Tepig. Is that it? I don't know. But it is one of the more difficult schedules still left, especially playing me and Tepig, who some may consider the top 2 in the league. I'm not going to lay my opinions on where I stand. That's why it's always been 11 teams. But I do have Tepig still ranked as the number 1 team. So very difficult schedule coming up. And his best win thus far is against Hazy, who he did dominate, which is good for him. He also played Reggie close, but he also has a really thorn in the side loss against PETA. Who is his other loss? Trying to remember who he also lost to. Oh, PETA and Reggie. But Reggie I have ranked above him, which is a fair enough loss. So yeah, we'll see what happens to him from here. But I think he has definitely, especially because he has very good differential at this point, has very good shot of making playoffs, especially if he can win his games against Jolty, D. Winchell, Jeff, which are 3 targets he definitely has the potential to win against. Um, so very important games for him going here. He hasn't been fully tested against top level teams, and we'll see what happens from here. Next up, I have Hazy, who hasn't played his week 6 game yet against Enzo. I do expect him to win that game. If he doesn't, I'll be shocked, and really he kind of screws his chance of playoffs at that point. He did have one of the most difficult early week schedules. He played Tepig, he played Pita, he played Reggie, and he played those 3 for his first 3, which is a very tough first 3. After that, he got really this easiest coaches all in a row with Kudo, Enzo, and did he play Flair? He beat Kudo. He hasn't played Enzo yet. I think he has Flair coming up. I'm not entirely sure about that. But he has one of the easier schedules from this point. He should beat Enzo this week, and that'll put him at 4-2, which is one of the better records in the league. And critical wins over Pita and Tepig, I think, are super important for him. And if he's able to just beat the teams who are at or below his skill level, he should make it into playoffs. We'll see what happens from here, but it's looking good for him, and he has shown well against most teams. I think his games against his 2 losses were in very, very dominant losses, very poorly played losses from him. They're going to kind of stick with him, and hopefully for his sake he doesn't play that poorly from here on out. But if he doesn't revert to those states where he lost against Classiel and lost against Reggie, where he didn't play particularly well, I think he definitely has a very good shot of making playoffs. But he also has been very inconsistent, but he has shown that he can hang with the top of the league. So, gonna be interesting battles from here, but I guess we'll just have to see. Next up at number 2, I have Reggie. Reggie was really encroaching on Tepig last week, but this week he really dashed my hopes for it by prepping and playing for Enzo quite poorly. He just didn't seem to have a game plan to break down the defensive core of Empoleon and Zapdos, or really even have a game plan to threaten Enzo. He brought a bunch of really slow mons, and he really didn't seem to have any substantive offense, which really put any pressure on Enzo, which I think he really should have had. Just a lack of offensive team building, a lack of prep to control the battle against Enzo, which you really have to do because his team is very offensive. If he had controlled the battle better, brought better answers to Empoleon, he definitely could have won the game much more dominantly, and he really ran the risk of losing this game. He played it okay, but he didn't prep for it very well, in my opinion. He just had no way to deal with the Empoleon. Although he did have the Stone Edge tech for the Zapdos, it meant that he couldn't touch the Empoleon and made the Empoleon even more hard for him to deal with. Luckily for him, Enzo choked and went hard into the Empoleon on the Pinsir, which basically made Pinsir have no checks at that point, but definitely could have been much cleaner from Reggie. So I'm not very impressed, even though he did get the win. It definitely could have been a lot cleaner and prepped for a lot better, and I think he'd probably admit that himself. So I'll be keeping at number 2 because he has been very consistent, with really only a deserved loss coming to Tepig, although I've been over it many times. He kind of deserved it to lose against D-Winchill just because he also, similar to this game, did not prep or play very well for it. But number 1, I have Tepig, who very cleanly disposed of Pita. He just out-prepped Pita. There was nothing Pita could do off of matchup. Tepig didn't even have to make plays. He just played the matchup and beat down PETA 5-0, I believe. Very clean win from him. He has his losses kind of inflated by the fact that we memed it out this week. I'm not even considering that in a result because neither of us were trying, and there was some shenanigans going on with that. So I'm not going to even consider that for rankings as far as I'm concerned. He can be 4-2. And although Reggie was kind of making a case for being the number one team, Tepig put that to doubt by absolutely dominating PETA, while Reggie struggled against Enzo, one of the lower ranked teams. So if Tepig's able to continue this form, he's looking good to... I would be very surprised at this point if Tepig didn't make playoffs. Same thing with Reggie. But I think past that, my 3 through 8 ranked teams are going to be in a serious... especially because I think a lot of people have me probably locked for playoffs in a similar scenario for Tepig and Reggie. I think for me, Tepig and Reggie, it would have to be a serious choke at this point, especially because Tepig has one of the easier schedules left. He hasn't played Kudo yet, he hasn't played Enzo, and I don't think he's played Flair either. So yeah, he's got a very soft schedule at this point. So with me, Tepig, and Reggie all being considered almost locks to playoffs at this point, we'd probably need to choke to not make it. It leaves 3 spots for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. So half of these teams aren't going to make it. It's going to be very intense to see who does and doesn't. But I think Tepig has really made the case that he deserves to be in playoffs, and I'd be very surprised if he didn't make it. So yeah, I'll be keeping him at number 1, mainly just because he's been the most consistent team. And his only competition up to this point was Reggie, and Reggie did not play well this week, while Tepig had a super strong win. So I'll be keeping him at number 1. So those are my rankings for this week. I think I probably talked more this week than any other week. So I guess that's more criticism if you like that, and if you don't like that and just wanted to see rankings, then I'm sorry for wasting your time and talking too much, but I'll see you next week.